Hey loves, and welcome back to my channel. It's Idoma here, and in today's video we're going to learn how to make this beautiful shirt dress. For this dress I am size 8, so I used 2 yards of the wine red fabric, and the crepe fabric, the carton color fabric, is not up to 1 yard, but it is still okay. Now this video will be in part 1 and part 2. It is too long, so I had to adjust. Now these are the fabric that I have this carton color fabric. It's a crepe fabric, though it is somehow stretchy, but if you're making yours, you should find a shirt fabric. Do not use crepe. Then I also have a wine red. It feels like a thick duchess, but it is not a thick duchess. But if you're making yours, look for shirt fabric. Shirt fabric will be very easy for you. This paper right here will accommodate my front and my back. First of all, I will draft a normal shirt gown, just a normal gown that does not have flay or anything. Now I have marked 8 inches for my armhole, 10 inches for my bust point. My half length is 16. My shoulder to hip is 26 and a half. Then I'm using 35 inches as my full length. I want it to be a short gown. Then I'll go ahead and connect all these lines. So the front and the back of this gown will enter this paper. The first thing that I'm going to do is to measure out my button allowance. You know, shirt has button allowance, right? So at the center front, you will measure out your button allowance. And I'm using 2.5 for my button allowance. You can see I am marking 2.5 for my button allowance. And I'll go ahead and mark a straight line, this 2.5 inch from the top of the paper to the down part of the paper. After marking out this button allowance, I will label it so that I will not get confused, and then I will fold. I have marked my 2.5 inches line for my button allowance, and I'll go ahead and label button allowance. After labeling it, I will fold it inside so that it will go out of our face, in order for us to focus and understand what I'm trying to do. This gown is tricky. It looks simple, but it is way tricky. Now I'll go ahead and fold in my button allowance. This is the front part of this gown. So from that place where that fold started from will be our center front. You can see I have folded that paper. Now this is our center front. The next thing that I'm going to do is that I will mark my hip measurements. I'll divide my hip into 2 plus 1 inch for allowance. Then I will go ahead and mark a straight line. Sorry, I divided my hip into 4. My hip is 40 divided by 4. That is 10 plus 1 inch allowance. And I am dividing my paper from there. Like, I want to find the mid of this paper. I want the front pattern, front block to be on it. I want the back block to be on it. Now this is chest line, this is bust point, this is half length, this is hip line, and this is my full length. Now I'll go ahead and label the back side also. I have my hip line there, I have my full length, I have my half length, and I have my chest line. There is no bust at the back, so I am not extending the bust point line to the back. Now we have our front and our back block. The next thing that I'm going to do is to go ahead and take my measurements. And like I told you, I'm taking like a normal gown measurement. My neckline will be 3 by 3. I'm using 3 by 3 for the front. The wideness is 3, the depth is 3. Then I'll go ahead and connect. So this gown that I'm drafting right now, I am making it a fitted, more like a normal gown for my body. We are still going to do slash and spread, so there is no point doing extra. Then I'll go ahead and mark my shoulder. My shoulder is supposed to be 16, but I made it 19 inches. I want it to be wider than my normal shoulder. If you check that shirt very well, you will notice that the shoulder fell off the normal shoulder. The shoulder is wide. Then from there, I connected to my armhole. At my bust, at my chest line, at my bust point, I will divide my bust by 4 and mark whatever I have. No allowance. My waist, I will divide my waist by 4 and mark whatever I have. No allowance. Like, you can see that my shoulder is really wide, and it is okay for me like that. I like it that way. That means that if your shoulder is too wide, that means that your armhole curve will not be too curvy. That is what will happen. So if you want to make your own shoulder your normal shoulder, fine. But my own shoulder is wider than my normal shoulder. Then at my hip line, I will divide my hip by 4 and mark. no allowance, hip divided by 4, no allowance. Then from that hip line, I will extend a straight line down. Now this is what we have for the front. No darts, nothing. Just take your normal body measurements and then go ahead and cut out. So after cutting this out, I will use it to cut out the back part of my shirt. And for the back of the shirt, it will be on fold, no button allowance. The neckline will be 3 by 1.5 or 1 inch, 3 by 1 inch. The neck depth will not be too much. I'll go ahead and cut out my shoulder slants. Now this is what I have. So using the remaining paper, I will cut out my back. I'm just trying to manage my paper so that I will not waste too much. I'll go ahead and place my front on my back, and using it, I'll cut out the same thing that I have at the front. You don't need to do too much. Just go ahead and cut out the same thing you have at the front. There is no dart. It's just a simple shirt block. Then after cutting that out, I told you guys that my neck depth will not be too deep. I'll make it 1 inch. I'll just use 1 inch for my neck depth. So at my neckline, I'll come down by 1 inch and I'll mark. Then from there, I will connect it to my normal neck width. Then I will cut out. After cutting that out, I'll cut my shoulder and my armhole. Right now, I am done cutting my front and my back block. So I'll go ahead and label so that I will not get confused. This is the front. This is the front and this is the back. The difference between the two of them is the neckline, and then the front has a button allowance. So now it is time to draft out the fitted part of that shirt. You know, the waistline from the underbust down to the waistline of that dress is fitted, right? So now at my bust point, you can come down by 3 inches, or you can just mark your underbust. My underbust is 13, or you can just come down from your bust point. You know your underbust, so measure your underbust and indicate your underbust line. So this is my underbust line. I'll go ahead and label my underbust. Now you can stop at your half length, but for me, I came down by extra 2 inches from my half length. I want the fitted part to be very pronounced, so I'll just go ahead and mark a straight line also, and from there I will curve down to my hip line. You give it that basque shape. I came down by 2 inches from my half length, and from there I marked the basque shape. You know, that shirt has this basque shape effect. Then from your underbust, you will go up by 1.5, because if you check the front, it is curvy. Then you connect from that 1.5 above your bust point down above your underbust down to your underbust. So now after doing that, I'll go ahead and shade. You can see what I did there. Number one, from my shoulder, I had to find my underbust first of all. Then from my half length, I came down by 2 inches. From that 2 inches, I marked a basque shape. Then at my underbust again, I went up by 1.5 above my underbust, because that place is not straight, they curved it. Then I connected from that 1.5 back to my underbust. Now I am shading. This place that I'm shading indicates the fitted part of the gown. So after shading it, that is our front. You can see our button allowance is still there. Our button allowance is very much there. Then using this, I will have to find the same thing at the back, because the back of this dress has a fitted part also. Though I couldn't find a picture of the dress, of the back of the dress, but I know. And I'll place the back and then indicate where that design started from. It started from our underbust and 2 inches below the half length. Now I've gotten the point where that design, where that fitted area is at the back. I'll just go ahead and mark a straight line. You don't need to do this basque stuff at the back. So after marking your straight line, you go ahead and shade. You just go ahead and shade. So shading this place will help you know the fitted part of the dress. So now you can see that this our shirt is just a straight normal shirt, normal gown. Then after cutting off these fitted parts, every other part of the shirt to have slash and spread effect, so that we will have what we want. Now I am done shading, and I'll keep the back first of all. I don't want us to get confused. I'll be following everything step by step so that we'll not get confused. So you can see two of them are equal at the waistline. The fitted parts are equal. Now I'll keep the back aside. Let's start with the front. We still have part 2 of this video. We will explain very well. I want to explain very well. That's why I'm dividing the parts. Now I'll go ahead and cut out this basque area, but the way I'm cutting it is not really correct. I will show you the correct way of doing that. So now, instead of cutting it this way, our button allowance is still on fold. No, you go ahead and open up your button allowance. Your button allowance should be open while cutting. Your button allowance should be very much open while cutting. So from that place where your basque ended, that is our hip line, you cut a straight line before you cut out the basque. So after cutting, this is what you will have. You just keep it aside. I've made a mistake on this already, so I'll just go ahead and use my masking tape to hold them together. Now I am done holding them together. Just go ahead and close it so that it will give you that straight line before the basque shape. I hope you understand. So I have corrected that. You can see what I have right there. So you would repeat the same thing at the top. You can see I have cut out the basque area. The next thing is to cut from our under bust. And when you get to where that curve stops at, you just cut straight. Your zipper allowance should be straight, so that after doing everything, 2 of them will merge at the zipper allowance side. Now I will go ahead and cut out this one on a plain fabric. I'll cut it out on a plain fabric. It has to be 2, one for the right side, one for the left side. And as you are cutting, remember to add your half inch seam allowance. It is really important, because if you miss out your seam allowance, everything may not align when joining. So just go ahead and add half an inch seam allowance. Now we are done. We have our front and our back. So the straight part is more like the button allowance. You can see that it is taking shape already. Now I'll go ahead and keep this aside. Then for the top, this is the top from the underbust and above. I'll go ahead and mark straight lines. This is for my slash and spread. So when slashing, your slash should not be reaching your shoulder. This dress has a little gathers around the underbust. So before I will slash, I will fold my fabric first of all. You fold your fabric into 2 because you have the front, the right and the left, right and left part of that shirt. So you just go ahead and fold. If you fold, you place this one on top. Have enough fabric, then you will start slashing. As you are slashing, it should not be crossing your shoulder. That gather is just at the underbust. It will not reach the shoulder, so your shoulder should remain the same. Now after slashing, you go ahead and spread. Then after spreading, you will cut out. You add half an inch seam allowance around this slash and spread. Please remember to add half an inch seam allowance before cutting out, so that when you gather it on the fitted area, it will look perfect. Then I'll go ahead and cut out the other side, my button allowance, my neckline, and my shoulder and armhole. Now this is what we have. We are done cutting that part. We have 2 pieces right now. If I open it up, you notice that I have 2 pieces. I said that we'll be following everything step by step to avoid confusion. Now this is what I have, and if I should bring back that fitted area and place under it, you see what I have. The fitted area is smaller, so you go ahead and gather the other one. You gather it so that it will enter there. That is how you will sew that particular part. So that is what I'm going to do on the both of them. just go ahead and gather so that they will fit. You can see the effect it is giving me. My slashing and spreading did not reach my shoulder area. Now I am done gathering that, and this is what I have. It is really looking good. My gathers is mostly under my breast. So this is what I have. If I turn the back, you can see what I have right there. I hope we are following. Then we are done with the top. We are done with the top. The next thing is that we are going to slash the lower part of this shirt, like from the hip downwards. You're going to slash from the hip downwards. Now this is the paper for the hip, the basque waistline down to the full length. You go ahead and slash. So this one for the slashing and spreading should affect every part of it, both the basque waistline area and the full length. Now before I will slash, I'll also go ahead and fold my fabric into two. I'll fold my fabric into two before I slash so that it will be very easy for me. I need to get the right side and the left side of this shirt gown. Then after placing my paper on it, I will start slashing. After slashing, you start spreading. So you should be spreading, let's say 2 inches away from each other or 1.5 inch away from each other. It depends on how full you want the shirts you are making to be. It depends on how full you want it to be. So me, I'm just spreading 2 inches away from each other, and after doing that, I'll go ahead and cut. And as you are cutting, remember to add half an inch seam allowance. It is very important. Remember to add half an inch seam allowance. I'll go ahead and cut out the full length, the side, the top, and then you trim off the excess around the zipper allowance. You don't really need to add any allowance around the zipper allowance area. So now I am done slashing and spreading for that part, and I'll go ahead and keep it aside. So if I open this up, you will notice that I have 2 pieces there. I have 2 pieces right there. So I am going to gather it on the basque area of that gown. I'm going to gather it on the basque area of that gown. So this is the point where we'll be stopping at. In our part 2, we will have to continue with the joining, the back, and everything. For now, this is where we are going to stop. This dress is looking easy on camera, but making it wasn't that easy for me. So guys, just subscribe so that you know when I'll upload the part 2.